Home, the gold.
He could be too far. No, he's kicking. Oh, what a catch!
Puts a spicy forehand out in front of Naomi Morcilla.
Move for the win. Team Canada. Garrett Wu!
Santos with the layout grab.
Oh, that fantastic grab. The claws of Chaffer.
Canada just became the world champions.
Yo, Canada and the rest of the world. You're listening to the Huckin podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Theo, living in Kingston, Ontario, flying solo today. So, gonna be a one-person show here. So I guess I'll do the get to know you part solo as well. So essentially, been back in Kingston. Had a chance to actually come back to Toronto as well and enjoy the Jays game. Saw my best friend in Hamilton, which was super fun. Him and his wife, who are newly married. His wife, big fan of the podcast, so hopefully she's listening out here. But yeah, got to go back to Kingston, back to work, back to the grind. For those living in Ontario, perhaps East Coast, I'm not sure if this affects West Coast as much, but I know in Quebec it definitely affected in some ways. But there's some smoke out there, you know. Had a few practices canceled due to some smoke out here, so stay safe, everyone, wherever you are in Canada. I know it's affecting the United States as well in terms of like pro baseball games being canceled, stuff like that. So stay safe out there. I'll be in Montreal this weekend, so hoping for good weather there. I'll be playing in the tournament we're going to be previewing. So lots to talk about today. Results happening. All-Star Game roster announced, which is cool. And then some previews of tournaments happening this weekend. Specifically, FishBowl and Jazzfest. We'll also touch on another tournament that is happening as well in the news section. So we're going to do that right now.
We now have breaking news.
All right, so we talked provincials last time, Ontario and BC. So we're going to talk Alberta here. They also have a mixed provincials. So I got this news from the Mofo Boys Instagram account. So thank you, whoever runs that, for helping out with some news. So the team that finished first is SJR. They looked good at high schools. I know they didn't probably do as well as they would like, but they win provincials here in Manitoba. They defeat Kelvin. So those two teams, powerhouse programs. In third, Westgate and Sturgeon. And in fifth, tied for fifth, actually. There's also a tie for third, but tied for fifth, St. Paul's, Balmoral, Hall, and Westwood. So what happened was SJR and Kelvin, they went undefeated till the finals. Kelvin only allowing 9 against until the finals. I think that's just 9 within the game. Semi was stopped due to 4 points into the game due to some thunder. So you never want to see that. SJR was up 4-0 on Sturgeon and Kelvin was up on Westgate 2-1. 2-1 is smaller advantage. 4-0 obviously much larger. So both Sturgeon and Westgate forfeited because they couldn't do some of the makeup days. Not sure exactly how that works out there over there in Manitoba, but essentially the finals got pushed back. So did the semis. Semis got pushed back. It was at 12, then they got pushed back to 3:30, and I guess they couldn't field the team or something happened there. So they ended up not playing. SJR and Kelvin meet in the finals with SJR winning. So tough for some of those teams who obviously have to travel, but also like work hard all year to play in this tournament to have that happen. But that's what happens when you play outdoor sport. These things do occur. So sucks, but congrats to SJR. You don't win high school nationals, which once again happens before a provincial tournament, but you do win provincials. So kudos to you. We're going to completely flip the script and go into America here for mixed Easterns. There were a few teams playing. So we're going to first talk about Montreal Flames on Rose. They were in the classic pool. So there's 15 in the main pool. It's supposed to be 16, but they had 15 and then 17 to whatever the last team is here. Looks like 30. So Montreal Flames on Rose, they go 3-0 in pool play. Super exciting. Take out the top seed in their pool, 11-9 to start the day in Scarecrow. And they kind of keep it moving from there, winning 12-8 and 11-3. So they head into the quarters, they win quarters, but unfortunately lose to New York Swipes in the semis and end up finishing 4th in the classic pool, losing to Lowbridge 15-10. New York Swipes has a player Fiona Nugent, Scotty Dempsey, don't even know your real name, but one of the hosts of the Laying It Out podcast had a chance to commentate with Fiona/Scotty, same person, during D3. So that was super fun, and no, that's the mixed team she's a part of. So kind of a cool connection there. Flames on Rose coming in fourth in Classic. And then in the kind of elite division, there were a lot of Canadian teams. So Red Fox was there, Crash, Team Canada mixed U24s, and Spawn. So we'll start with Red Fox. They were in a pool with Slow, Grand Army, and Lampshade. Slow being the number one seed in the tournament. Red Fox starts off their tourney with a big win, 10-9 over Grand Army, but proceed to get, I'm going to say, crushed by Slow, 13-3. And then they lose a heartbreaker to Lampshade, 11-10. But because of how Grand Army did against Lampshade, beating them 11-5, Red Fox actually got the third spot. So that's kind of sweet, I guess. They didn't fall to fourth in the pool after that because they were helped out by point diff. Crash seeded third at this tournament and first in their pool, and things, to say the least, did not go well for them. Not the results they wanted. I know, obviously, they won Tux and expectations were pretty high, but sometimes you just have a bad tourney like this and you move on. So we're expecting to see them continue to make moves in the mixed division here in Canada. Just not their day or tournament here at Mixed Easterns. They do get the win to start the day, defeating Heatwave 12-5, but then they lose to Deadweight, which is the fourth seed in their pool, 11-3. And then a tough, looks like a universe point loss to League of Shadows, 8-7. And because of their loss to Deadweight, 11-3, and some other things happening in their pool, two teams finished 2-1. They finished 1-2, and they actually finished last in their pool and are regulated into the consolation. So real tough for them. I know they have to travel super far away from Kitchener-Waterloo area. So tough for them, but like I said, if you're a Crash fan in the audience, you're hoping to see them rebound here. I believe they also had more people than their actual roster, from what I've been told. But USAU roster doing some funky things. Anywho, Team Canada Mixed seeded fourth, top in their pool, and they kind of show it by going 3-0. So defeat, nice little Canadian matchup, defeat Spawn 13-6, Obscure 11-7, and then Darkwing 11-3. Whereas Spawn, they dropped the aforementioned game to Team Canada. They defeat Darkwing 11-6, but fall to Obscure, the 13th seed in the tournament, so one seed below Spawn. So they finish, Spawn does, in a three-way tie. And because of point diff and one of their big victories that they had, defeating Darkwing by 5, they actually finished second in the pool. So that sets them up well for bracket play. So now moving on to bracket play here. Quarters are for teams that finished first or second in the pool, looks like. There was also a crossover that took place as well. So we'll discuss the crossovers first, which helped get some teams in the quarters, namely Red Fox. So Red Fox actually got into the quarters because they won their crossover, defeating League of Shadows, who came in second in the pool. So that was big for Red Fox, getting themselves into the quarterfinal round. Team Canada played Sprocket in what is essentially like 1v1 crossover battle. So both teams still in the quarters. It's kind of just for seeding. Sprocket wins 11-10. And then Spawn, unfortunately, loses to Garbage Plates, a team from Rochester, New York. Garbage Plate's kind of a staple food there, which is interesting. They lose 12-7. So anywho, your teams now in the quarters is actually U24s versus Red Fox. U24s defeats Red Fox 14-5. They go on to proceed to defeat Slow. I think that might have been Universe, but 11-10. And they go on and lose to Sprocket 13-10. So they come in second. Good showing from them. Lots of experience, I'm sure, from that tournament. Tough for them to lose to Sprocket, but Sprocket a good team. Didn't make nationals last year, but expect them to be back. Red Fox ultimately finishes in 8th. They dropped their next 2 games to Grand Army and Heatwave, respectively. Spawn, on the other hand, they end up playing Crash in the 9th place bracket. So I stand corrected. I said Crash was relegated to the consolation pool, but that's because they dropped this first matchup here in the 9th place bracket. So they lose to Spawn 15-11. Spawn then loses to League of Shadows 13-11 and ultimately finish 11th place. 4-1 the final score. I don't know if that's right. Maybe Spawn need to get back to New Brunswick. So that's how that worked out. Crash finishes in the consolation by defeating Darkwing and Lampshade on Sunday. The rest of their Sunday. So that's how it finishes up for Crash there. So once again, really cool to see different Canadian teams. Hope to see Spawn again at Nationals. I know they had a great quarterfinal match last year against Danger Noodle that I got to call on the stream. So hopefully Spawn you go to Nationals again. Expect to see Crash there and Red Fox as well. So moving on, roster release. Traffic's roster came out. So really cool video. Probably one of the best that I've seen so far this season. So definitely check it out. Alicia Brawley is a rookie I wanted to shout out just from UVic, balling out for them. They got some U24 players on the practice squad, which is great because they get to play U24s and then go back to practice with the top level club team. We talked about roster losses with Sixers. Don't really see the same with Traffic. They don't have many departures if you look on the Ultiworld Livewire page. And on top of that, the departures aren't of the same magnitude. No disrespect to those players, but not of the same magnitude as the players that Sixers aren't going to be with, who are, World Games level players. Traffic also going to be playing in a tournament this weekend, Saturday, June 10th. They're going to be playing Seattle Soul, Seattle Underground, and Seattle Riot, kind of little preseason round robin, which is fun for them. Speaking of kind of round robins, the things that happened there, the Border Bash happened and took place. We talked about U24 Open being there, Furious, Blackfish, Sockeye, and then Richard and Associates. So TCU 24 defeats Sockeye. That's huge. I asked the team if it was the full Sockeye. They said it was. So regardless, you beat Sockeye, and if you're Sockeye, you send whoever you send. So you can't really, you can't really say anything about that because you just got you put in your roster of Sockeye. So regardless if it was full Sockeye, half Sockeye, doesn't matter because TCU 24s defeat Sockeye 15-11. Love that. They go on to drop games to Furious 13-14 and 13-15, so close showings there. And they defeat both Blackfish and Richard and Associates as well at this Border Bash round robin kind of tourney, mini tourney, you want to call it that. Furious also played 2 games against Sockeye, splitting universe point wins. So some good results for all the teams involved for TCU 24 and Furious. I know this is kind of the last, from what I understand, the last kind of tune-up for them. Worlds is not that far away, 3 weeks or something like that. So this is good for them to get experience under their belt, taking on Sockeye and those things. And for the TCU 24 women's team, they'll be playing that all-star game that we've talked about. You got to go check it out. If you're in Ottawa, I know, the weather, potentially some issues, but I recommend that you go and check it out. So all-star game is taking place on June 10th, which is Saturday, 7 to 9 p.m. Doors open at 6:30. It's at a stadium at U Ottawa there, Matt Anthony Stadium. Their all-star roster was announced. I'm not going to go through the whole roster. You can go on Ultimate Canada's Instagram page to look at it yourself if you would like. But there's a mix of young players, even some young players on Fusion or Stella, or like just players that are not rookies. One of them is a rookie, I think. But some younger players in the scene as well. Obviously some Masters players with Sage and Stello being represented. So I think it's a cool mix of experience, athleticism, talent, and I think they'll give a good game for them, for the U24 team, and for the U24 team to go against a World Games player like Alyssa Mason, who's on the roster. That should be exciting for them as well. So if you're not already going, you should go. And I believe the game, I hope, is being streamed, so you should check that out as well, and go and support kind of this initiative that's happening. I think Ultimate Canada is really trying to push this, and maybe we'll see more showcase games in the future. So the only way more showcase games happen and the way that Ultimate continues to build is if people go. So if you're in the Ottawa area, please go and support. Go watch some high quality Ultimate, and hopefully we can get more showcase games like this in the future. So jumping around back into the West Coast Vancouver area, mixed tournament happening called Disc Flicker. Didn't know this tournament existed. It's been around for a few years, but of course being an East Coaster, don't really know as much in terms of these kind of cool West Coast tournaments. So I know there's a Flower Bowl and Sun Flicker. Now there's Disc Flicker, which is kind of a cool tune-up tournament. They have a couple of teams not from Vancouver coming, so that's pretty sweet. Grit City from Tacoma, Washington, and Squid Inc. from Bellingham, Washington. Your top 4 seeds is the aforementioned Grit City. They're the 4 seed. And then your first 3 seeds are Red Flag, TT, and Forever Young. There's a couple other teams in this tournament that will also be going to nationals. Super Dumplings, Fable, I expect to be there. Mola Mola was there last year. We'll see what happens with all the teams from Vancouver cropping up if you look on the Ultimate Canada registration page there. Just Okay is another team from Kelowna that is signed up for nationals right now. Forever Too Young, believe that is just Forever Young's B team, as well as Happy Campers, which will be in the Masters division. So kind of a fun tournament to start with the different pools, 4 pools of 4. And it kind of goes from there, and you'll see like your traditional pre-quarters to quarters and all that. My prediction is going to be Red Flag wins it all. I don't know if it'll be close. I'm not sure how close TT is. I know they had some interesting results at Sunflicker, which was a bit of a time ago. So we'll see how they do. So I'm gonna predict Red Flag winning. I'm gonna say TT. I know, going chalk here. TT in the final, but I think Red Flag's going to take it. It'll be a good early season test for them as well, just to get the legs underneath as they start to play some other tournaments, and excited to see them in Vancouver when they play at Nationals this year. So they're registered on the website, and that is also a reminder for you to go and register for all that good stuff related to Nationals. You can do that. I believe the deadline is June 15th, if I'm not mistaken. So you have some time to do it, but you got to do it soon. Art Hawkins Canadian game, that's happening this weekend. So if your local Ultimate community is doing that, you kind of got to get in touch and figure that out and see what happens there. So final bit of news, always going to be AUDL, semi-pro. So Montreal, the only Canadian team in action, there's only 2. So Toronto was on a bye. Montreal loses to New York in a game that I think was closer than maybe some people thought. They hold New York to 16 goals. They do still take the L, but some good showing there. New York was missing Yacht, Brendan Tan, John Randolph, Anton Davis, among others. Those are the kind of the biggest names they were missing. Liam, I know it's not McCoyne, I believe, is how you say it. 3 assists, 2 goals. Malik Oj-Samar, 1 assist, 2 goals, 2 blocks to lead the way for the Royale. Royale are going to be playing Boston on Sunday. Will be interesting to see what type of fans, how many fans show up, because a lot of them will be playing this tournament that I'll be previewing in the main event in Jazzfest. So very fascinated to see how that plays into things. Boston, they're trying to keep things rolling, trying to hold on to that playoff spot. So a good game to watch out for. And then Philly's going to be taking on Toronto on Saturday, which is a big game for both teams. Philly coming off a big W over Carolina. So they're carrying some momentum. Toronto, you're beating Montreal, but you have yet to defeat an American team. So they're hoping to do that this Saturday. So if you're in Toronto, go support the Rush there, and vice versa. If you're in Montreal, go support the Royale. Continue to support this live Ultimate, and it will continue to happen. So that is the news. We're going to head to main event. It's not going to be a full extensive preview, but there'll be a preview in there of both FishBowl and Jazzfest. That'll be coming up after the break.
Hey friends, this is Morgan Hibbert from Vancouver Furious George and Team Canada, and you're listening to the Huckin podcast, your coast-to-coast guide for all things Canadian Ultimate. Giddy up.
All right, main event time. We got some big tournaments happening out in the eastern part of Canada here. We're going to start with the FishBowl, a women's tournament. Last year, remember, we talked about it. There was like a round robin with Sixers, Fusion, Salty was there, Stella, and Iris. This year, expanded to 7 teams. I know Salty was supposed to be there, but I guess didn't get enough interest. They were even announced as part of having an all-star team. So I know, unfortunately, Salty not able to go. It kind of sucks, but, that's how things go sometimes. So we're going to talk the schedule. Since it's not as publicly available, I'm going to go through all the matchups in each time slot. It's just a round robin, 8 rounds, and just kind of go through and highlight some cool things to watch out for in each time slot. So round 1's the first time slot here. Iris, you get the bye, so you're not playing, but Sixers takes on Sage. So Sage is women's Masters team. The way I heard it described is Iris's Masters team, basically. Stella plays Fusion. That's a really exciting matchup between teams, I think, that are going to be looking to not just be in quarters at Nationals, but semis and beyond. And then U24 women's, they get their first shot at competition, and they'll be taking on Stello. So kind of cool to get some experience against people who've played Team Canada in the past and are Masters players, but still very talented and going to give U24 a good run. Second time slots are 90 minutes long, so there's 15 minutes in between. So second time slot, Sixers plays Iris, so that's really exciting. Probably someone consider a marquee matchup there. Stello plays Sage, so battle of two Masters teams, and U24 plays Stella with Fusion getting the bye. Then round 3, Sixers plays Stello, Iris plays their older siblings in Sage, and U24 plays Fusion with Stella getting the time off. So with that schedule already taking place, you can see that Sixers will play 3 games in a row, and so will U24. So Iris will also be playing 3 games in a row. They just get that first time off. And so in the round 4 time slot, Iris will play Fusion, and Stella will play Sage with a few teams, 3 teams having a bye. And then, of course, it's the All-Star game that night. So I already told you in the news. Going to tell you again to go check it out. So 4 players from each of these teams will be playing, minus, of course, the U24 team. 4 players from each of these teams will be playing for the All-Star team as they take on the U24 squad. So it's a lot of mileage for these players, which is can be good and bad, I guess. It will be exciting to see all those teams in action, especially on the showcase field. So they don't really get rest because you play the showcase game 7 to 9, as I mentioned, and then you're playing 9 o'clock on Sunday. So this is round 5. Sixers takes on Fusion. Iris plays Stello, and U24 plays Sage. So Stella gets the bye there. Fusion, a team that went to Worlds, a team I'm not sure if we haven't seen their roster yet that I've known. So it's kind of cool to see them get tested against Sixers early on in the season. And Iris taking on, they took on Sage obviously in the first day, and now they get to take on another women's Masters team in Stello. Round 6, Sage takes on Fusion. Sixers goes up against Stella, and then Iris takes on U24. So within this round robin format, I don't want to say you take all the results with a grain of salt, but just remember it does, I think, personally, it sometimes matters where things are in the schedule. So sometimes results can be skewed based on like when you play a team. Maybe they have jet lag, whatever. So that always sometimes plays into this. Not the last time slot, but round 7, Sixers takes on U24. So talked about how Sixers, Iris, pretty good marquee matchup. Obviously this one as well, Sixers versus U24. This will be the third, by my count, the 3rd game in a row for Sixers and the 3rd game in a row for U24. So that will be interesting. I just talked about that scheduling thing. So, I mean, it affects both teams the same way. They both play 3 games straight on Saturday and Sunday, and both teams are doing the same on Saturday, and now they're doing it again on Sunday. So that'll be interesting to watch out for. Iris, Stella, great matchup. Kind of similar to what I said for Stella Fusion. 2 teams potentially looking to burst into the semifinals this year and beyond. And then Stello Fusion to wrap things up in round 7. And then round 8, every team is off except for 2 teams, and that's Stello and Stella. So that's older sibling, younger sibling matchup to wrap things up. Really interested to see who takes that one. But it looks like everyone gets the same amount of games, if I'm not mistaken. So you get 6 games. I'm assuming some of the teams want to get home, specifically Fusion, and U24 is going to have a lot of players from UBC and Vancouver, so potentially a chance to go home. I think I've said this before, Danny's talked about this as well. Just having competition for these U24 squads really good, really exciting for them, and also kind of right now is their last opportunity to get the reps in before Worlds. So really hoping that all the teams that play them just like show off their best and just give them a lot of things to learn and develop with their experience. So Exciting to see this Fishbowl tournament. Once again, All-Star Game also taking place. Really cool to see how this tournament has continued to expand and attracted some different teams as well. So kudos to Allison Fisher, the rest of the organizing committee. Hope that it continues to develop and grow there. Moving on to Jazzfest. So that's also another tournament happening featuring a lot of Quebec teams, as well as some teams from around, especially in the open division. So we'll first start off with women's division preview. So 2 pools of 5. Interesting the way they set this up. So there's 1 to 5 power pooled and then 6 to 10. So your number 1 seed is Cube from Quebec City, and then Incognito from Toronto, Aguada from Gatineau, Kezar, Quebec City Women's Masters Team, and PPF from Kitchener-Waterloo. That rounds up your top 5. And then 6 to 10 is Vintage, a Masters team from Montreal, I believe. And then EXO out of Sherbrooke, Momentum, a team out of, I think part of Club M in Montreal, Karma out of Quebec City, and Volt out of Montreal. So that's your 6 to 10. So they'll play their whole pool, and then there'll be a crossover actually in the morning. So if you are 3A or 4A, you will have to play a crossover, it looks like, on Sunday morning. So the teams in the B side, so potentially Vintage, because they're the first seed, and EXO, they have a chance to play over and try to get into the top 4, because otherwise, after that, it moves into semis. So it moves into semis from there. And so you're going to obviously want to try to get one of those spots in the crossover. So we'll do predictions as I always do. I see a lot of it going to perceived chalk here. I actually have Vintage, I believe, crossing over and winning their like crossover matchup here. I'm just going to take a look. Yes, I have them beating Kezar in their matchup. And then I have, let's see here. Oh, excuse me. No, I have Kezar beating Aguada. I have Aguada losing to Vintage. And so your semifinals, Cube versus Vintage, Incognito versus Kezar, and Cube and Incognito in the finals, with Cube taking it, kind of going chalk here. Incognito, excited to see what they can do after their results at Tux. And Cube, they did well at Frisbee Fest, so I expect them to do well at this tournament as part of that. No Venus this year at this tournament. I know they won last year, so we actually interviewed them on the podcast last year. Kezar, EXO, and Vintage, they all had a 3-way tie at Frisbee Fest, so kind of hard to separate those teams because that was a tournament that happened previously. So Jazz has another way to separate these squads before they play Quebec regionals and try to get some good seeding for nationals. So that's your women's pool, 10 teams. I'm going to say this now because as the time of this recording, all of this is taking place, including Fishbowl. I should have probably said this in the beginning, but things could potentially change based on weather and smoke. So just remember that. And the reason why I say this is because 2 teams dropped from the tournament for open more recently. So I actually had to wait for this new schedule to come out to record. Hence why it's coming out a bit later than normal. So for open, you're going to have 2 power pools, C and D. So that's going to be your 1 to 8 seeds, and it's going to be snaked. So I'll go through each pool, and then we'll kind of talk about what I see shaking out, and also the other pools. So Pool C has your seeds 1, 4, 5, and 8 in that order. So the 1 seed in the tournament, Pipe from Toronto, they just come off their victory at Tux. Red Circus from Halifax. Fun fact about them, or maybe not a fun fact for them, they're going to be missing some people because some of them will be on the Farmers Brown Greenhouse team that is going to Windmill. So I believe some of them are going to Europe early. So they'll be missing some people, picking some people up. So it won't be the full Red Circus squad you see at other tournaments. Quartz out of Quebec City finished 4th at Frisbee Fest, and then out of Gatineau, who finished 5th at Frisbee Fest. They are the 8th seed and round out the pool in C. In Pool D, you have Quake out of Quebec City. They did well at Frisbee Fest, as I mentioned previously. Believe they fell in the finals to Ensom there. Hound out of Durham region, Manic out of Montreal, and then Rumble Jacks, which is a combo of Alberta Flatball Club and Whiskey Jacks. I know they're trying to create a more provincial program, so you're seeing them round out the seeding there as a 7 seed. Your other pools, E, F, G, and H, they're kind of snaked as well. So 9, 10, 11, 12, and then it goes like 13, 14, 15, 16, and it continues to wrap over. So Pool E with the 9, 16, and 17 seeds, you have Grand Trunk from Toronto, Magma from Montreal, and I am looking at an old schedule, so I'm going to have to redo that for you. Just kidding. It's E5, E, F, and G. So that changed because of the new schedule. So it does still snake around, but your Pool E has 4 teams. Pool F and G have 3 teams each. So Pool E has GT from Toronto, Madhouse from Halifax, Magma from Montreal, and Rage, which is also part of that same system as Magma. They're the 18 seed and round out that pool. Pool F is Sherbrooke Ascension, T-Rex from Trois-Rivières, and then Roy from Toronto. And then Pool G has Dead Circus, the Masters team of Red Circus, great name, from Halifax. So lots of Halifax representation, pretty cool. They're the 11 seed and the top seed in Pool G. Mesa from that same Club M system. And then Loyal from Laval, rounding things out. So there is some crossover play to be had. For Pool C and D, if you finish 3rd or 4th, you actually have to cross over and play somebody else. And so if you're in Pool E, you actually have 2 shots. So if you finish 2nd in the pool, you have a chance to cross over. Pool F and Pool G, so Ascension and Dead Circus's pool, you have to win the pool to have the crossover. So by my calculations, I'm going to predict that the 4 seed in the C pool is going to be Quartz. I played against them many years ago, but I think Out's going to have the advantage, or Out's going to bounce back and beat Quartz here. So Quartz is going to be the 4C of the crossover, and they'll take on Grand Trunk. And actually GT, I know they finished 9th last year. They're going to bump into the top 8 this year, and they're going to take out Quartz. My prediction, 3C is going to be Out. They would play Madhouse, and though Madhouse had some good results last year, I don't see them beating Out, so Out's going to keep their spot. Your 3D, Hound's not going to like this because I picked against them before, but I'm going to make them prove it to me one more time. I'm going to say Manic actually defeats Hound in pool play. And so Hound would be the 3D seed. They would take on Dead Circus, but I do have Hound winning. And then Rumble Jacks, unfortunately, I got you finishing 4th. And you'll be taking on Ascension in a tight game. Ascension's been a good team, but I think Rumble Jacks is going to win. And also kind of a disclaimer here, I will be playing at this tournament. I won't say what team I'm playing for. Maybe I'll say it after. But I will be playing this tournament, which I'm excited for. I get to play with my good friends Nate Crane, so pretty stoked for that. So my semis picks are Pipe, Red Circus, Quake, and Manic. By Manic defeating Hound in pool play, they get a better matchup. So I have, going a little chalky chalk. I might have picked Red Circus if Red Circus had all their players, because I'm hyping on this team. They came 2nd at No Borders last year, and I think they're going to do well. I believe they're going to national, so I expect them to do pretty well. But I have Pipe and Quake in the final, but I do have Quake winning. I've been very high up on this Quake team. I saw the reinforcements they added, some ex-Royale players. I think they did pretty well. They did pretty well at nationals last year, and I think they're only getting better and have gone better. So Quake bouncing back from their Frisbee Fest tournament, they're going to win it. So that's my prediction here. Fun tournament to be had. I love Jazzfest. Stay tuned for the subscriber only, where I talk about my favorite memory of just when I got a chance to play Jazzfest early on in my career. So stay tuned for that. That actually wraps up the episode. Kind of a shorter news and preview. It's easier when it's one person to kind of go a little bit quicker. So thank you for tuning in. Follow us on social media. If you're at Jazzfest and you see me around, come say hi. It's always fun to meet people that listen to one or all or some of the episodes. So make sure you do that. And hopefully we'll have some more discussion, of course, of the different results that take place, and more preview stuff for you coming this summer. So continue to stay tuned. Danny will be on at some point. So stay tuned for that. And of course, Worlds coming up. So Danny will be away for a little bit. But we'll still have the podcast going. So thank you again for being a supporter. And we'll see you next week.